AZTEK Airbrushes by Tester thanks you for purchasing your new airbrush. This video will help you get started. We'll go over startup instructions, troubleshooting, then basic airbrush techniques. Please have the instruction manual handy while you watch. We'll refer to it as we go along. Your new A320 airbrush is designed to be held comfortably in the hand like a pencil. Its advanced technology makes it lightweight and well-balanced, with contours which allow you to work for hours with no fatigue to the hand. The AZTEK system features 9 interchangeable nozzles, each with a specific purpose. Your airbrush comes with a medium coverage nozzle and a large coverage nozzle for laying down backgrounds. Others include a fine line nozzle for intricate illustration work and a spatter nozzle for special effects. There are 2 nozzles designed for use with acrylic paints, easy-to-clean nozzles which allow acrylics to flow freely. In addition, there are 3 super high-flow nozzles for use in laying down large amounts of paint, as well as for thick fabric paints and even ceramic glazes. All of the airbrush parts are interchangeable with our other airbrush models. If you upgrade to the AZTEK A430 or 470 professional airbrushes, everything will fit. Pick a nozzle, screw it in. Use the little red plastic nozzle wrench to make the nozzle nice and snug. Don't use a pliers or any metal tool. You'll ruin the nozzle. There should be a small gap between the nozzle and the airbrush body. Tight, but not over tight. If the nozzle isn't tight enough, you'll get blowback into the siphon jar, causing bubbles and possibly spilled paint. This airbrush comes with the air hose already connected. The air hose screws right into the top of the aerosol propellant. It works best to keep the can upright while you attach the hose. Canned air gets cold. After 2 minutes or so, the pressure will drop. There's nothing wrong with your airbrush. You just have to wait for the can to warm up. To get around this, place the air can in room temperature water. If you prefer using a compressor, the AZTEK model numbers AC200, 300, and 400 airbrush compressors are reliable and sturdy, ideally suited for all airbrushing applications. If you do use a compressor, there's an adapter included in the airbrush kit, so you can attach your airbrush to the compressor. All color cups and bottles are interchangeable, different sizes to hold different amounts of medium. Your airbrush comes with 2 siphon bottles, ideal for large projects. Look inside the siphon bottle. Check to make sure the siphon tube is firmly attached. Find the blanking plug. Insert a blanking plug in the airbrush body, either side, depending on whether you're right or left-handed. Blanking plug on one side, siphon bottle on the other. A word or two about paint. You can use almost any paint with our airbrushes. Make sure that the paint is thinned at least to the consistency of milk so it won't clog your airbrush. And use the right nozzle. Fabric paints work best in the high-flow nozzles. Thin with whatever the paint manufacturer recommends. One more thing. Right now, when you first try out your airbrush, please use water. Practice with water, then use paint. This model is a single-action airbrush. To set it up the way you want, start with the roller turned to the left, all the way to the off position. Push the trigger down and hold. Now turn the roller to the right until you have the amount of paint that you want. Now, every time you press down the trigger, you'll get the same amount of paint. Adjust the roller while you work to fine-tune the flow of paint. Paint starts to dry inside when you set the airbrush down, so occasionally while you work, take a stiff, short-bristled brush, dip it in airbrush cleaner, and clean out the nozzle. While working, here's how to clean the airbrush. Remove the color bottle. Insert the airbrush into the cleaning station. Turn the roller to the right, to the on position, and spray out the old paint left in the nozzle. Place a bottle of cleaning solution into the paint port. Let the cleaning solution flow through, and you're ready to change colors or change nozzles. That's all the cleaning you have to do. This special filter catches almost all of the paint particles, so occasionally you'll have to change filters. The liquid stays in the glass jar. Fumes will still be present, so you still need good ventilation in your work area. You can also soak the siphon bottle cap and tube in cleaner to remove old paint. The nozzles do eventually wear out and have to be replaced. Do not disassemble the nozzle for any reason. If you need to clean it, soak it in the cleaner appropriate to the type of paint you're using. Occasionally, you may want to use the little plastic tool that comes with the airbrush kit and fits all the openings. Just turn it gently like this, and it'll clean out excess paint. Reassemble the airbrush and you're ready to go. If you've tried your airbrush with water and encountered no problems, you're ready for paint. Use water-based paint first, just to be safe. Your airbrush is an extremely versatile artistic tool. It can be used with almost any type of pigment on any surface. We'll show you some of the ways it can be used, then you can think of new ones. Right now, in order to get the feel of your new airbrush, practice on throwaway sheets of paper, gaining proficiency and control of your airbrush. Do a series of X's. Now put a dot in the center of each X. Do a series of curves. Keep practicing until you feel comfortable. Experiment. Learn to keep the line moving at all times. You can't stay still or the paint will build up too much. See what happens if your airbrush is closer to the paper, farther away. More paint, more air. Try laying down a background. It's best to hold the airbrush a little further from the paper than you think you should to avoid unwanted intensity. Build intensity with each stroke, creating a background that builds from light to dark. Overlap another color and see how the colors blend. Lightly at first, then increasingly more intense. Instead of mixing colors on a palette, use standard colors and blend them right on your work. Much of what you achieve with an airbrush comes from this ability to shade and blend colors. Airbrushing puts at your fingertips a variety of techniques that work together to give you professional results. Whether used for hobbies, arts, or crafts, the shading and blending of colors are effective on any paintable surface. Basic skill in drawing is always helpful, yet many of the best effects realized with an airbrush come from your ability to think in shapes and contours, using various stencils, masks, and friscues to define edges and forms. Here's a simple beginner's technique. Tear a piece of paper in a jagged pattern and save both pieces. Lay one of the torn pieces over your drawing paper and use it to define a sunset. Then position the other torn piece, perhaps slightly askew, and paint the mountaintops. You have the beginning of a landscape. Another simple technique lends itself to model making. Business cards are used as a straight edge to produce a fine camouflage job on this model plane. Position and reposition the business cards to define areas to be painted. Notice the serious hobbyist controls the paint mess and hazard with an AZTEK spray booth. Its filter system and powered fan remove paint fumes from the work area. Change colors, adjust the flow of paint to a finer spray, and lay down a freehand camouflage pattern, keeping your hand relaxed and moving at all times. Almost anything can be used to create a pattern or contour. Silhouetting a leaf, for example. The bristles of a paintbrush. A plain paper doily can be used to create an effect like a stained glass window by using white paint on black paper. And here the same technique, using lace, is used for the background of an illustration. Another part of the background was created by spraying through a screen. In the same illustration, the looseness of hair was created by positioning and repositioning a French curve, held in place while spraying, so it produces a hard line. A loose mask is an edge that you move while you spray, making a soft line or contour. These eyes are good examples of both loose masks and hard masks. Almost anything can be used to create a pattern. A piece of paper torn out of a loose leaf notebook. Spraying through the torn holes makes a subtle design in the background of this painting. Even an electronic circuit board will give you an interesting pattern. Here, it's used to suggest windows in a building. The background of this painting looks like rock. It was created simply by using the spatter nozzle, laying down a stipple effect of dark paint over a light background. If you reverse that approach and use the spatter nozzle for white paint on a black background, you can create stars and galaxies. To add a shining star with pronounced rays of light, cut a piece of acetate in two. Make a small gap between the pieces and position that gap over a star. Spray. Reposition the acetate and do it again until you have a starburst effect. Here's an example of what's possible. A top artist created this space illustration using a combination of techniques the first time he tried out an AZTEK airbrush. Another talented artist painted this scene with fabric paints on a denim jacket. Wearable art is only one of the many uses for an AZTEK airbrush in the craft studio. Notice this crafter places her air compressor on the floor to keep it out of the way while she works. For beginners, it's easy and fun to create tie-dye effects with an airbrush. You can tie the cloth with rubber bands, or, in this case, merely bunch it and twist it into whorls, then spray. Change colors and continue until you have a bright and colorful t-shirt. One of the most useful airbrushing techniques is the use of stencils. Attach the stencil firmly and evenly. Add tape to the edges to protect against overspray. Spray lightly, building up the color to the intensity you like. On craft items that have rough surfaces, it's wise to lay down a coat of white first, so the subsequent colors will stand out. Shade and blend the colors. Here we went over the edges of the red rose petals with a light layer of purple to give the rose more definition. There is an excellent selection of pre-cut stencils on the market. Here we're using Vision's Stick-and Stencil, easy to use because it has a light adhesive on the back. This butterfly is created with overlapping stencils, which provide a detailed design. The plate is then embellished with a doily pattern and a freehand blending of colors. This plate was airbrushed with paint, then coated with a sealer. However, it is possible to use ceramic glazes with the high flow nozzles. This sink was purchased from a hardware store and airbrushed with glazes, then fired in a kiln. Similar to stencils is the use of frisquets, an adhesive masking film that can be cut with a sharp hobby knife to create any shape you like. Here, the artist sketched outlines on canvas with a pencil, covered the canvas with a frisket, then cut along the outlines. The AZTEK airbrush is ideal for work on large canvases or murals. It can cover a large background area, then be quickly adjusted for fine detail work. Masking film is also widely used in model making to create detailed painting on contoured surfaces. This nitrobum resin figure requires a white ring on his head like a canister of nitrous oxide. Most of the painting of resin figures is done freehand, meticulously adding layers of color until the shading is done to perfection. The leg of this chicken hawk resin figure is painted in shades of green, starting with the lightest, then layering progressively darker tones. The result is a superb paint job that rivals anything in fantasy or monster art. Much of airbrushing is a combination of techniques. Here's a simple way to paint a droplet of water. Cut in acetate the shape of a water drop. Save both pieces of acetate. Position the cutout shape where you wish and define the edge of the water drop. Remove the cutout mask. Spray a shadow under the droplet. One more time with the negative mask to add a little white for reflected highlights. And then place, freehand, another dab of white for a reflection near the top. Done. At first glance, it'll look like you've spilled water on your paper. Whether you intend to use your new AZTEK airbrush exclusively on paper and canvas, whether you're a serious model maker interested in historically accurate and meticulous paint jobs, or whether you're taking your work in crafts to the next level of professionalism, the airbrush you hold in your hand is generations ahead of other spraying systems. Enjoy yourself exploring the capabilities of your new airbrush.